Hey guys, what's up and welcome back. Today I wanted to go over a couple of situations that are common on the ladder where they're basically common tilting scenarios and what's the kind of etiquette or what kind of things should we be thinking about when dealing with these situations, right? So the first one we're going to take a look at is when Protoss starts chatting at the beginning of the game into Cannon Rush, right? So this one is like pretty common. So we normally do good luck, have fun at the beginning of the game, right? We always do GLHF at the 3, 2, 1 countdown. So you don't see that on the replays. And usually opponent will do the same or do like a U2 or good luck, have fun, whatever, right? So as long as they don't do anything like this here, then we just play it out. But if they send us a message like this where they're asking us a question, expecting us to type back, we treat that as suspicious, and what we want to immediately do is go into the message log, right-click their name, and block communication with them, right? So as we're watching this replay, we're going to see all the messages that this person is sending, but in the game, we only see this first message, and it doesn't, the rest of the stuff doesn't distract us, right? But, like, obviously this guy's going to start cannon rushing us, right? So our 17 scout sees the probe and the pylon, and then we send 2 SCVs out to help attack the probe. And the priority here is to block off the ramp so that the probe cannot get on the high ground and start building stuff on the high ground, right? Other than that, we're trying to do our build out double gas as normal. We get a kill on that probe. Here comes the second probe. First priority is to get the bunker up. The bunker is going to cover the ramp and protect the Marines. And then we want to make sure that the probe can't get on the high ground, so we sacrificed all those SCVs to repair the depot, right? And then out of the factory, we want to tank first, and then we should go 1-1-1 before expand, right? But like here, opponent's still typing stuff. We don't see any of this. We don't really care what the opponent thinks. And then we get our tank out. Our tank defends the ramp. Our tank is taking care of the cannons. And then next up, we want Cyclone and then Reactored Vikings, right? So typically what we should assume here is failed cannon rushes lead to Stargate most of the time, right? So we don't want to continue building tanks. We want to switch into Cyclones. But then we also don't want to add on swap more than we need to. It should be sufficient to do Reactored Vikings, single Cyclone out of the factory with the tech lab, and then the choice is whether to build the reactor out of the barracks or not, or just continue to make Marines. If they do get into Stargate production and get out Void Ray into Tempest, is what they usually do, they are going to attack the ramp. They're going to attack those depots, and they're going to attack the add-on that's in the wall. So could consider not getting the reactor on the barracks in the situation. But basically, with the tank out and the Cyclone out, this is essentially held. And then, you know, the follow-up here isn't perfect, but that's part of what I want to think about, right? So 2 things for this replay, right? One is, what do we do when opponent starts being chatty at the beginning of the game, especially Protoss? We should just assume that they're trying to be sneaky, immediately block them, right? The best time to do the block is when the message block is when we're building our depot, right? So just like if we were playing against random, we send the SCV scout out as we're building the depot. Same thing here. If we're playing against somebody who's being BM chatty, we block them as we're building the first depot, right? And then we want to defend the high ground, keep the wall up, don't let the probe on the high ground. And if we do that, it's a pretty easy defense. 1 tank into Cyclone, into Reactored Viking should cover what they're trying to do, right? So we can move the tank into better position now. We're just dealing with 1 stalker. And then all his buildings are depowered. And then as the Void Ray would have popped out, we would have had 2 Vikings and a Cyclone to deal with that, right? So even if they got the Void Ray out, we would have had the correct units to deal with it, and then we could just play the build out normal from here. If they stay in the game and we've killed the Stargate, we might want to go back into tanks, because then we should assume if they stay in the game that they're going to build a bunch of cannons to defend their bases, and tanks are the counter to cannons. And then Reactor Vikings and Cyclones handle all the Stargate units. And then Reactor Vikings are also going to be good against Stalkers, right? So we know they're going to go Stargate because essentially when they cannon rush like this, they have no tech, right? So they build the Forge first, and then they build a gateway. They have to build a gateway to get Cybernetics Core, and then once they have a Cybernetics Core, they pick their tech, and then most likely they're going to pick Stargate because Stargate doesn't require any additional tech, right? If they're playing Gateway style, they also need Twilight, or if they're playing Gateway plus Splash, they need Robo and Robo Bay, and there's just no way that they can do that after a Cannon Rush. They don't have time to build into that, right? So if they want to keep the game going, we know that their most likely choice is Stargate, and we can basically just counterattack with a 1-1-1 setup before we even get our natural, like, fully saturated, right? So we could land our natural, start saturating it, but we don't need to get our natural fully saturated before we counterattack. We don't need to go into full 4M production. The other thing that could potentially happen here is they could build the Stargate like more like in a proxy location, like over here. Sometimes they'll take the expansion over here, and they'll do that to build batteries to abuse the high ground terrain, right? So normally if they go straight into like proxy Stargate, they'll build it like over here and batteries over here and abuse this terrain. In this case, opponent built the Stargate over here, most likely because they're trying to combine the shield battery to protect the buildings plus protect the Stargate units, right? So that's a typical Cannon Rush defense hold when we can keep them onto the low ground. And then what we'll do is we'll link in the video description a video from ZombieGrub that's about a month old, where she holds Cannon Rush on the high ground where their opponent's also building stuff on the low ground. And that video is really important because it shows that low ground pylons cannot power high ground cannons, right? So there's some really important stuff in her video about the low ground, high ground defense and how to do that, how to defend the wall, and then just how to handle the priority of which buildings you're going to kill with your SCVs, right? So I don't have enough micro skill to really beat an opponent if they start building stuff on the high ground, which is why I like the double gas build, which gives me a chance to fully wall off before opponent can get their probe onto the high ground, right? So that's that situation, which is opponent being chatty into Cannon Rush. We want to block them, right? Okay. Other common situation here. Looking for my TBT replay, and that's this one. Okay. So this is against Unranked Random now. So against Unranked Random, the situation is extremely frustrating because they have like no skin in the game, right? So they're not risking any ladder points. We don't know what their race is, and we have to send an early scout when we drop the depot, right? So there goes our scout, and then we're going to set up for double gas, and if it's against Zerg, hopefully we see the hatchery, and if we see the hatchery, we might be able to not build the second refinery. But we want to build the second refinery at 75 minerals, and the only situation that we won't is if we see the hatch on the low ground. But other than that, we have to take our gas, and we have to assume that we're going to play out double gas, which is another good reason why we're playing double gas against Protoss, because in the situation against Random, we want to have consistency, right? So 2 out of 3 of our builds are going to rely on double gas, so we're going to default to a double gas opener, and then if it's Zerg, we can either not build the refinery or cancel it while it's being built, right? So that helps a bit. And then what's going on here is Okay, I see it's Terran, and then I should have continued up with that SCV and checked the gases before leaving, right? Just to know for certain that he is opening double gas and not Reaper Fast Expand, which will inform our build a little bit better, right? So back to etiquette for a second while our build is playing out as normal. From here on out, I'm not going to do good luck, have fun against Unranked Random or against Barcodes anymore. Okay, so he makes his first Reaper. And his first Reaper gets a pick off on my SCV, which is extremely annoying because my second Reaper hasn't popped yet, and the timing of my expansion is like way off, right? And that's because normally I build the expansion with the returning SCV, but because the SCV scout was sent early, right, the choice that I should probably be making is scout a little more with that SCV. So scout the gases, scout around for proxies, right? And then use that SCV to build the expansion as normal, rather than what I did, which was rally an SCV down, and then it got picked off by the Reaper. But normally what we do is as the factory is about to finish, we move the Reaper down to defend the SCV building the natural. But in this case, the timing was just thrown off a little bit, and he gets a pick on that SCV. So the expansion isn't delayed much, but already we're in a less favorable position than if we just played our build out as normal. Okay, now we send our SCV scout out. He scans. This guy scans a lot. We send our SCV scout out, and what we're going to see is basically we get a nice scout here, and we see factory on reactor, and we see factory being built on tech lab, right? So we know this is mech, and we decide to play mech as well, but I don't think our mech build is good enough to beat somebody who's doing unranked random smurfing, right? And I accuse this guy of smurfing at the end of the game instead of doing a GG, which I shouldn't do, but the way he contains me, like, really did not feel like a player on equal skill level. It seemed like he's a much better player than us. So he builds two factor. He builds a lot of units out of two factory and one starport. He pokes the front. He pokes the front with two Reapers, a Raven, and four Cyclones. And he backs out against tank, bunker, two Cyclones, two Ravens, right? So let's look at units. He's ahead on SCVs. I'm building two factories now. Kind of even on gas. You know, also earlier he did a Raven harass, right? Had he not done that yet? So he's already ahead on SCVs a lot. I wonder how he got that advantage. So now he sends the Raven around. That's just before I moved my Cyclones back into position as well. That's frustrating. So he gets 6 kills there. And then we're trying to set up our 3 factory production. Meanwhile, he's been producing on 2 factories. And he goes eBay Armory. I definitely agree with that. He's way up in SCVs. 9 Cyclones to 2. 1 tank to 3. 2 Ravens to 3. Okay. Okay. So he pumped out Cyclones. And he goes Blue Flame first? This is interesting. Two starport. Now he's getting his third factory, landing his third. I'm taking my third. So he's on 4 factory, 2 starport. I'm going up to 5 factory. He's going to have his +1 faster. Very forward sensor tower. Fourth on location, then pushes out. It's got a lot more supply. I don't have siege tanks in a good position here. I play mech mainly against Zerg, and this is like a very anti-Zerg setup here with 3 tanks in a bunker. But against Terran, you need very forward siege tank positions, because as soon as they get a siege with this many cyclones, it's problematic. I didn't. Those Widow Mines were purely an accident. So normally when I'm playing against Zerg, I spam VSA for Hellion Cyclone tank. Yeah. So now he's just in. Yeah, exactly. He's basically got tank Viking now, which is the best mech composition against Terran is basically tank Viking. You have those cyclones for early game, but then their utility drops off. And what's he producing? Yeah, he's producing Hellion tank Viking. So I definitely agree with this player's playstyle for mech. They're just so ridiculously far ahead. ADS-CVs, triple armory, plus fusion core. 2 starports, 4 factories, 3 orbitals, 4 bases, and then if he had time to redistribute his SCVs, he could have perfect saturation with some to spare. He could be building a 5th base as well. So this guy really cleaned my clock, and I don't like how I played the mech build out. I definitely want 3 tech labs, 2 reactors, right? Because he's got 3 tech labs, which makes sense. You need to be favoring tanks. And then on his starport, he's got reactor tech lab, which makes sense. You want to be able to build Vikings still. He's got +1 blue flame, smart servos. So he's kind of emphasizing his Hellion play, and that also helps with the Vikings. But this feels like Hellion-centric. And then he skipped the Hurricane Thrusters entirely, which is another interesting choice because it lets me know that he's not interested in playing Cyclones in a late game. He just wants to be belting out tanks and Vikings, which feels correct. And then the Hellions are there instead of the Marines, basically. Yeah, but this is just such a good siege of my bases. So I call him an unranked random smurf. I checked his profile afterwards. It looked like he was a 3.3K Terran, and then lower MMR in the other 2 races. But I don't know. This is a tilting situation. The unranked random, it's pretty hard to, because you have to think, okay, what build order am I going to do? We're going to open double gas, fast scout, check what race they are, and then go into my build. And then with my Reaper scouts, I see that it's mech, and then I decide to play mech against mech in TVT, especially when they commit early to mech. especially against reactored cyclones, right? You kind of want to counter reactored cyclones with reactored cyclones of your own. But, he basically dominated this game start to finish. So that's what gives me the feeling that they're smurfing against me as well, right? You basically never see, even at this MMR, like 3.3K, Terrans don't usually play this well, especially when they're meching Terrans. But this was just like completely clean start to finish from this guy. So, I don't know. Basically, against Unranked Random, I'm not going to be good luck having fun anymore. And not going to be GGing. We're not going to communicate with Unranked Random, and we're not going to communicate with Barcodes going forward. I do want to get an answer for how I should be playing TVT Mech, and I was hoping watching that replay would give me some guidance, but as much as I liked how that guy executed his build, I don't think that build is necessarily perfect, right? He played 3 armories and fusion core, and he played 4 factory, 2 starport. I would think you would want to go 1-1-1 into 3 factories, into 5 factories, into 3 starports. And basically what we can do is we can build 3 Ravens and then swap on to the barracks reactor and build Vikings. So go standard opener, which is Reaper, 2 Cyclone, Raven, and then decide that we need to adjust, maybe drop the 3rd quick, and then go 3 Ravens into reactored Vikings, and then make some amount of Cyclones, skip speed, and then go into tanks, right? So we've got to figure out what that TVT mech build looks like exactly. Okay, and then here's the last situation, which is against Barcode Zerg. So against Barcode Zerg, we start the game off with good luck, have fun, which we're not going to do anymore, and then we'll see why. So we're just going to zoom through this one at 8 speed. So we send our scout out. Our scout sees it's a late hatch, and then we circle around because what we're looking specifically for is if they go for fast Roach Warren. So if a Zerg opponent plays, and I should have known just by the hatch timing, like what I should have observed is that the hatch is just a little late and that Zergling speed is on the way and it's 1 gas. That should have been enough information for me to just turn this SCV around, but I stuck around because I wanted to see if they were going to follow this up with Roach Warren or Baneling Nest. And if it's Roach Warren, we have a very specific counter that we do, which is we put first off, we build the expansion on the high ground, but then we put a bunker on the wall, and then we get out tank and Viking, right? And put the tank about here, and then have the Viking kill the Overlord to deny vision. Because if it's fast Roach Warren on one base, it's going to be a Ravager bust, and we have to very specifically react to a Ravager bust, right? But if it's anything else, if it's a Bane bust, a Link Flood, or if it's Dropper Lords, which this game it's Dropper Lords, or if it's fast layer into Nidus Network into Swarm Hosts, right? If it's any of those situations, we can just play our build out as normal, our 2 factory Hellion Cyclone build. But if it's specifically against fast Roach Warren, we have to make an adjustment, right? So in this case, it ends up being just link speed into Dropper Lord play. So we probably should have built on the high ground, but we're just trying to get the expansion up, right? So we don't know exactly when link speed is going to finish. We get the expansion done. We convert it into an orbital, and then we let the orbital finish before floating it off, right? So we would have been so much better off if we just built this thing on the high ground, right? It would have been done already. We could have dropped the mule. We wouldn't have to pull off the line to repair it, and we could be producing SCVs, right? So anytime we show up and the hatchery's not orange to yellow, then we should just build on the high ground, right? Okay, because we forget to land that as well. So then he goes Dropper Lord, drops in our main, and somehow our group of units is enough to handle this. So 4 Marines, 1 Reaper, and 1 Hellion handled his Lings no problem, mainly because he tried to attack my SCVs. And then we're just going into our Hellion Cyclone build per normal. All right, so let's zoom through this. So opponent's going to keep poking at the front. They're going to set up Dropper Lords again. We got turrets. We saw them on their minimap. We go counterattack with Hellbats. Kill his 3rd or his 4th. Trade out a bunch of units. And then from here, we're just going to be defending on our side of the map, getting our bases set up. We send out a Hellion to check the production, or like the expansions. So we see that the Zerg is on 4 base. So we know that if we get our 4th base set up, we're going to be in a good position. All right, they kill that expansion, but we got another command center building. And then it's just going to be like 10 minutes of us repelling his attacks before we can finally push out across the map. And in terms of the composition opponent is playing, I actually like Roach Hydra against our mech style, but they have to have Ravagers as well, right? So in my opinion, the best thing a Zerg opponent can play against us is Roach Ravager, Hydra Lurker with Spellcaster support. So like Infestors and Vipers. Fungal isn't like that great, but Neural Parasite obviously is. And Fungal is definitely useful. But it's really the Vipers with Blinding Clouds and Abducts that's going to be the most useful. And then Parasitic Bomb is obviously good against our Banshees as well, right? So what opponent did against us was pretty good, but we were able to get our 4th and then 5th bases set up. We're not playing particularly well with our tanks, but you can see opponent's got a pretty big supply lead against us most of the game, which is how these mech matchups usually go. He even kills his own Ravagers, which I think is kind of nuts. He killed something. I'm not sure what it was exactly. He tries to go into a Muta switch, but we already got Thors out to deal with that. And we were adding Liberators as well, because I like playing Liberators against Roach Ravager. And then he gives me the big old fuck you. And that's why there's literally no point in communicating with the barcodes, right? Because we're literally at Diamond MMR, right? Why do we need to be a barcode in Diamond MMR, right? Nobody's going to remember your handle for the most part. And the only reason you're going to be playing barcode at Diamond is so that you can, try to play non-standard, right? So it doesn't mean that they're not going to play standard, but it means that they're more likely to try cheeky things like that Dropper Lord play, right? So opponent goes Dropper Lord play, it gets denied, and then plays pretty standard from there, is ahead the whole game, and then finally gets beat with a mech 3/3 counterattack, basically, right? Mech 3/3 mech. And then get out Liberators and Thors, and we're okay pushing out across the map, right? And then gives me the big old fuck you, right? And we played that out on 5 Factory, added 2 additional starports, and that's if we want to play Libs, right? So why did we play Libs? Because he was playing Hydra Lurker. Libs are generally pretty decent against Hydra Lurker, but if we see unranked random and if we see barcode going further, just from an etiquette perspective, we're not going to do good luck, have fun anymore, because we're assuming that these players are also playing without etiquette. So we're just going to be like a bot for them, right? We're not going to good luck, have fun. We're not going to GG. In all other situations, we're going to do our good luck and have fun and our GG when we get beat, right? But not against Unranked Random and not against Barcode. And then we might want to preemptively chat block them as well. But like the first example with the Protoss Cannon Rush, they're specifically trying to chat us up to throw us off so that we can't micro our SCVs properly at the beginning of the game to deal with their Cannon Rush, right? So, yeah, I was looking for a way to tie the Cannon Rush defense video in. Had done a couple of takes of it, but didn't like the content. Thought it was kind of too short and really not comprehensive enough for the types of videos that I'm creating. But then having the 3 most commonly tilting ladder scenarios where I could put it in a video format like this and kind of review them each individually, plus also think about the TVT mech matchup a little bit, was happier with putting together a 30-minute video on that. So hope that helped. Hope you guys enjoyed that. It's really about ladder etiquette and dealing with tilt, and then also just planning for these situations, right? Like you plan the ladder, these scenarios are going to come up, and what's our plan for dealing with them? In StarCraft 2, you basically need a plan for every situation. So that's what our moves are going to be. Okay. Awesome. Thanks for watching, guys. Take care. Have a good one.